What happens when one of America's most unbreakable country legends steps into the lion's den of daytime TV, and the host, known for attacking from behind a desk, decides to take a shot at her? It was supposed to be a friendly interview filled with smiles and promotion. But in under 5 minutes, it turned into an all-out verbal brawl that left the audience frozen. One loaded question detonated the room and left Joy Behar face-to-face with a woman who doesn't just sing about strength. She's lived it, survived it, and never backed down from a fight. Trust me, this talk show won't disappoint you. It'll be worth every second of your time. The view started the way it always does. Bright lights, big smiles, that fast, cheerful energy like nothing serious could possibly happen in the next 10 minutes. Reba McEntire walked out to applause, waved, and sat down like a pro. Black blazer sharp, posture calm, eyes steady. She gave them the kind of smile she's had to use her whole life. Friendly enough for TV, but measured. She sat down, crossed one leg over the other, and gave Joy a polite nod. But her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the table like a veteran walking into unfamiliar territory. Joy didn't waste time warming up the crowd. "So, Reba," she said with a sweet tone that barely hid the edge underneath, "you've been around long enough to see real talent. Don't you think today's social media musicians are watering down the art?" Reba's smile froze for half a second before she answered, "Joy, I think what waters down art is pretending there's only one door people are allowed to walk through." Joy raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting resistance this early. Reba leaned slightly forward and added, "And if this is where we're going, let's be honest about it instead of dressing it up as nostalgia." The audience shifted in their seats, sensing this wasn't going to be a soft promotional chat anymore. Joy pushed harder, saying phones were replacing skill and viral fame was replacing hard work, trying to bait Reba into criticizing younger artists. Reba didn't dodge it. "You keep saying easy," she fired back calmly, "but you've never uploaded your heart to the internet and let strangers tear it apart for clicks." Joy laughed awkwardly, but Reba didn't stop. "You're talking about talent like it belongs to one generation, and that's not only wrong, it's lazy thinking." The studio went quiet. Reba straightened her back and locked eyes with Joy. "I didn't come here to trash kids chasing dreams. I came here to talk about music. But if you want to turn this into a courtroom for who deserves success, just know I've stood in enough real ones to recognize when someone's stacking the deck." Joy tried to jump in, but Reba cut her off smoothly, not raising her voice, just tightening it. "Ask real questions, Joy," she said, "not loaded ones designed to make people look small." Joy didn't back off after Reba's warning. She leaned in like she'd been waiting for permission to go sharper. "Come on," she said, waving a hand like the answer was obvious. "Anyone with a phone can call themselves a musician now. That's not art, that's content." Reba's smile didn't disappear, but it thinned, turning into something more controlled and exact. She looked at Joy the way you look at someone who keeps stepping on the same line just to see if you'll react. "You keep saying anyone," Reba said, voice steady, "like you've decided the whole generation is a joke because a few people lip-sync on an app." Joy shrugged and doubled down, tossing out TikTok like it was proof all by itself. Reba's eyes narrowed. Not angry yet, just focused, like she was lining up what needed to be said so it landed clean. "So, let me get this straight," she replied. "You see a phone, and you assume there's no skill behind it. That's convenient." The room tightened again, because Reba wasn't doing small talk anymore. She was building a case. Reba kept her tone calm, but every sentence cut a little deeper. "A platform is just distribution," she said. "It's not a talent detector. It's not a lie detector. It's a stage." Joy tried to interrupt with a laugh, something about stages being real and phones being fake, but Reba didn't let the joke turn the point into fluff. "Talent doesn't ask permission from technology," she said, clear and direct, like she'd been waiting years to say it. "If you can sing, you can sing. If you can write, you can write. If you can move people, you can move people. The tool doesn't make it less real. Joy's face tightened, because Reba wasn't giving her the easy clip. No kids these days, no fake agreement. Reba nodded once, like she was acknowledging the trap out loud. "You're trying to make me dunk on young artists so you can call it honesty," she said. "But it's not honesty. It's a shortcut." A low murmur ran through the crowd, the kind you hear when people realize the guest isn't trapped. The host is. Then Reba did something sharper than raising her voice. She held up a mirror. "Joy, you were a comedian before this desk," she said, still polite, but with that Oklahoma firmness underneath. "So, should someone say talk shows cheapened commentary? Should someone say a punchline cheapened conversation?" Joy blinked, caught between laughing it off and admitting the logic. Reba didn't press like a bully. She pressed like someone who knows exactly where the weak spot is. "Because that's what you're doing," she continued. "You're taking the loudest, easiest example, some kid lip-syncing, and using it to judge everyone who's actually working. That's not critique. That's you picking the dumbest clip you can find and calling it a whole generation." Joy opened her mouth, but Reba slipped one last line in, smooth as a closing argument. "If we're going to talk about art," she said, "let's talk about it like adults, without pretending your comfort with the old rules makes you the referee." Joy didn't like being cornered, and it showed. She straightened up, crossed her arms slightly, and shifted the argument to what she thought was higher ground. "I'm not saying you didn't work hard, Reba," she said quickly. "I'm talking about the traditional path. Record labels, producers, professionals. There used to be standards. There used to be quality control." The words sounded clean, but the message underneath was loud. Gatekeepers knew best. Reba let out a short breath through her nose. Not a laugh, more like disbelief. She tilted her head and answered slowly, choosing each word. "You keep calling it quality control," she said, "but a lot of us who lived through it remember it as permission control." Joy opened her hands like she was being reasonable. "I'm not questioning your journey," she insisted. Reba looked straight at her and replied calmly, "Good, because I'm about to remind you what that journey actually looked like." Reba leaned forward, elbows near her knees, voice steady but sharper now. 16 years old, singing in honky-tonk bars where the floor was sticky and the crowd was half drunk. $20 a night if I was lucky. She paused, then kept going, each sentence landing harder than the last. Thousands of miles in a car that barely ran, sleeping in truck stops, changing outfits in gas station bathrooms, performing for rooms with more empty chairs than people. Joy's face softened slightly, but Reba didn't slow down. "I didn't have a team. I didn't have a brand strategist. I had a voice, a guitar, and a tank of gas that was usually on empty." The studio felt smaller as Reba spoke, like the walls were pulling in. "So when you talk about paying dues," she said, locking eyes with Joy, "don't talk to me like I read about it. I lived it." Joy tried to regain control. "I'm not questioning your dues," she repeated, a little louder this time. Reba nodded once. "Good. Then listen to this part." She sat back, crossed her arms, and delivered the line that hit like a slap. "I've watched executives pick songs like they pick cereal boxes, based on packaging, not what's inside." A ripple ran through the audience. Reba kept going, calm but cutting. "I've seen incredible artists get buried because they didn't look right or sound marketable enough. And I've seen mediocre songs pushed to the top because someone in a suit thought it would sell fast." Joy shifted in her seat. Reba didn't let up. "That traditional path you're protecting? It didn't protect talent. It protected power." She let the silence sit for a moment, then finished with a line that made the tension spike again. "So, yeah, I respect hard work," Reba said. "And respect goes both ways. But don't confuse a locked gate with a high standard." Reba didn't soften after that. If anything, her voice got steadier, colder, more deliberate. You keep talking about the traditional path like it's some golden staircase, she said, shaking her head slowly. For me, that path nearly ended my career before it ever really started. Joy's eyes widened just a little, and Reba took that opening without hesitation. They told me I was too country for pop. Then they turned around and said I was too pop for country. One week I wasn't raw enough, the next week I wasn't polished enough. I was always wrong, no matter what room I walked into. She let that sink in, then added, They tried to rename me. They tried to change the way I talked, the way I dressed, the way I sounded. They wanted to sand me down until I fit whatever mold was selling that quarter. Her jaw tightened. That's not quality control. That's control. That's not protecting art. That's manufacturing it. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Reba didn't let the moment slip. She stood up from her chair, slow and deliberate, not dramatic, not rushed, just claiming the space. The movement alone sent a jolt through the room. Whoopi immediately leaned forward, hands slightly raised. Reba, let's take a breath, she started. Reba turned toward her with respect, but didn't sit back down. I am calm, Whoopi, she said evenly, but I'm not done. Then she turned back to Joy. Standing now, Reba looked less like a guest and more like someone taking the witness stand. You're defending a system that told me I wasn't enough in every direction at the same time, she said, and you're calling that standards. Reba took a step closer to the table, not invading space, but tightening the pressure. You want numbers? She asked. I can give you numbers. Joy stiffened. I can name 100 songs that got shoved onto radio because someone with power decided they'd make money, Reba said. And I can name 1,000 incredible songs that never saw daylight because the artist didn't fit a look, a trend, or a boardroom mood. Her voice rose just slightly now, not yelling, but sharper, heavier. That's the math of your traditional path. Power over craft, permission over passion. The studio went silent again. Reba held her ground, standing tall, eyes locked on Joy. So don't tell me that gate is there to protect music, she said. That gate was built to control who gets through. Joy had been losing control of the conversation for minutes, and everyone could see it in her jaw, in the way she kept shifting in her seat. Then she snapped. Without warning, she slammed her hand flat on the table. The sound cracked through the studio like a starter pistol. You know what? She fired back, voice sharp and loud. Maybe the real problem isn't the industry. Maybe it's established artists who can't handle honest criticism anymore. The words didn't just land, they exploded. Everything froze. No laughter, no clapping, no filler noise, just dead air and tension thick enough to choke on. This wasn't daytime TV banter anymore. This was a public confrontation. Reba didn't react the way Joy expected. She didn't yell. She didn't move. She simply looked at her, eyes steady, face unreadable. Then she spoke, slow and quiet. Excuse me. 2 words, heavy, dangerous, the kind that make people realize they've stepped into deep water. Reba tilted her head slightly. You're saying I can't handle criticism? Joy tried to nod through it, but Reba cut in before she could build momentum. No, honey, she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. What you just did wasn't criticism. That was disrespect dressed up like honesty. She took a breath, controlled, deliberate. You didn't analyze music. You didn't talk about craft. You didn't offer anything constructive. You took a cheap swing at an entire group of people and called it truth. Reba straightened her shoulders and leaned slightly toward the table. Not aggressive, just unavoidable. So let's define this, she said, locking eyes with Joy. Criticism is meant to make something better. It challenges the work. It pushes growth. What you did was perform outrage for attention. Joy opened her mouth, but Reba raised a single finger, stopping her mid-sentence. No, listen, she continued. If you want to criticize art, talk about melody, writing, vocals, production. Talk about substance. But when you say Anyone with a phone isn't real. That's not critique. That's you punching down because it's easy." Her tone sharpened now, still controlled, but cutting deeper with every sentence. "So pick one, Joy," Reba said firmly. "Either you were trying to help artists improve, or you were trying to look tough on television. Because you don't get to call it criticism and hide behind that word when what you really meant was judgment." The silence stretched again, heavy and uncomfortable. Reba held her gaze without blinking. "I've taken real criticism my entire career," she finished, "from people who actually understand the work. What I won't accept is someone tearing people down and calling it honesty." Joy's face tightened, pride clearly bruised, and instead of backing down, she went for the throat. She leaned forward and sneered. "Oh, please. You act like you're some kind of warrior. You sold records, wore cowboy boots, and got famous. Some of us have fought real battles while you've been singing pretty songs. Country music, princess?" The word hit the room like a slap. You could feel the air change instantly. Reba didn't respond right away. She stood perfectly still, eyes locked on Joy, jaw clenched, breathing slow and controlled. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than shouting ever could. "Don't call me princess," she said flatly. "You don't get to shrink my life into a nickname just to make yourself feel taller." The audience went dead silent, sensing this wasn't just anger anymore. This was personal. Reba took a step forward, not aggressive, but commanding, like someone stepping into their truth. "You want to talk about real battles?" she asked, her voice steady but rising in force. "I fought being told I wasn't pretty enough for country music. I fought being told I sounded too old before I ever got the chance to be young. I fought starting over after my marriage fell apart, rebuilding my life while cameras were watching." She didn't pause long enough for the moment to breathe. "I fought burying 8 members of my band after a plane crash and still finding the strength to walk back on stage 3 months later. I fought raising a child while working in an industry that chews women up and spits them out the moment they stop being convenient." Each sentence landed like a hammer, heavy and unavoidable. Joy's expression shifted from defiant to stunned, but Reba kept going. "I fought building my own label when everyone said I was crazy. I fought proving that a middle-aged woman could still sell out arenas when people were already writing my career obituary." Reba continued, voice stronger now, eyes burning with controlled fire. "So don't you ever stand there and tell me my success was soft." She took another step closer to the table. "Every inch of what I have was earned the hard way, in rooms that weren't kind, in moments where quitting would have been easier." Then she delivered the line that cut deepest. "But the hardest battle," she said, lowering her voice again, "the hardest battle was staying kind in rooms where people mistake microphones for authority." Reba straightened, shoulders back, reclaiming the space fully. "People like you think having a platform means you get to pass judgment without consequence," she said. "You think volume equals truth. You think sarcasm equals intelligence. And when someone finally pushes back, you call it being too sensitive." She shook her head slowly. "This isn't about ego, Joy. It's about respect. Respect for artists. Respect for struggle. Respect for the fact that not all battles wear uniforms or hold weapons." The silence was heavy, almost painful. Reba looked directly at Joy and finished calmly. "You crossed a line when you tried to make my life sound small, and I'm not going to let you do that, on this table or any other." Reba didn't explode the way people expected after a line like that. She did something worse for Joy. She got calm, not soft, not forgiving. Calm like a courtroom right before the verdict comes down. She squared her shoulders, looked Joy straight in the face, and spoke as if she were putting every word on the record. "Since you're so comfortable judging who's real and who isn't," Reba said, voice even, "let's be clear about what gives someone the right to speak with that kind of authority." Joy tried to scoff, but the sound didn't come out confident anymore. Reba didn't raise her volume. She raised the pressure. "What songs have you written, Joy?" she asked. "What instruments do you play? What stage have you walked onto where silence means you failed? What crowd have you had to win with nothing but your skill? What records have you sold based on what you created with your own hands?" The questions came fast, clean and sharp, like cross-examination. No insults, no profanity, just reality, one question at a time. Joy opened her mouth to answer, but Reba kept going, holding the floor like a witness who knows she can't be rattled now. "And before you say you don't need to be a musician to have an opinion, fine," Reba said. "People can have opinions about anything." She paused, letting the distinction land. But an opinion isn't a license to belittle. An opinion isn't a free pass to call people fake, lazy, or unworthy, because their path looks different than the one you're comfortable with. Reba leaned slightly forward. "You're not critiquing a song. You're critiquing a person's right to even stand in the room." The audience stayed silent because the truth was uncomfortable in the best way. Joy's posture shifted, defensive but smaller. Reba's tone stayed controlled, and that control made it sting. Then Reba brought the conversation to the part Joy hadn't expected, the part that made it impossible to frame this as celebrity ego. "Let me tell you why I'm not letting this slide," Reba said, voice steady. "Because I mentor younger artists. I talk to them when they're shaking before their first show. I hear them when they're trying to write something honest, and they're terrified people will laugh. I watch them work through rejection, through bad comments, through nights where they think they're not good enough." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "So, when you dismiss them, you're not just talking about music. You're dismissing the courage it takes to be seen." She let that hang in the air. "You're dismissing the part of them that risked showing up anyway." Reba straightened again and set a boundary so clear it didn't need volume. "And here's another thing," she said, calm but firm. "You don't get to reduce women who earned their seats with cute nicknames." She held Joy's gaze. "Don't call me princess. Don't call me anything but my name." A beat. "Say my name with respect, the same way you'd say it for any man who walked onto this stage after 40 years of work." She didn't threaten. She didn't beg. She simply stated the standard. "Because I'm not asking for special treatment," Reba finished. "I'm asking for basic respect. And if you can't give that, then maybe you're not the one who should be grading anybody else." For the first time since the segment started, Joy didn't rush to speak. She sat there staring at the table, shoulders tense, lips pressed together, like someone replaying their own words in their head and finally hearing how they sounded out loud. When she lifted her eyes again, the fire was gone. Her voice came out quieter, stripped of performance. "You're right," she said slowly. The studio barely breathed. "I came into this thinking I could score some easy points, make a joke, stir people up, get a reaction." She swallowed hard. "And somewhere along the way, I turned into someone who punches down instead of speaking truth." The admission landed heavier than any insult had. Joy shook her head at herself. "I talked about an industry I don't understand, and dismissed people I've never met. That wasn't honesty. That was laziness." For a woman known for never backing off, it felt like watching a wall crack in real time. Reba didn't jump in to celebrate the apology. She didn't smile like she'd won. She let Joy finish, then answered calmly, with the kind of authority that doesn't need applause. "I appreciate you saying that," Reba said, "but let's be clear about something." She leaned forward slightly. "Being skeptical is fine. Questioning trends is fine. Challenging ideas is healthy. But dismissing people? That's poison." Her tone stayed steady, not soft, not harsh. "The moment you stop seeing the human being behind the art, you stop having a real conversation." She paused, then added, "I didn't come here to embarrass you. I came here to stand up for people who don't get to sit at this table." Joy nodded slowly, eyes locked on Reba, not defensive anymore. listening. Then Reba shifted the energy of the room on purpose. "If you actually want to understand what's happening out there," she said, "I'll show you." She talked about a young songwriter barely out of her teens who writes openly about anxiety and small-town loneliness, building communities in comment sections where strangers support each other. She talked about a teenage kid covering old country songs online, putting his own twist on Hank Williams and Loretta Lynn, dragging classic country back into rooms full of kids who'd never heard it before. "That's not killing music," Reba said firmly. "That's keeping it alive." Joy leaned forward now, real curiosity on her face. "I didn't know any of that," she admitted. "I want to learn." Reba nodded once. "Then start by listening, instead of labeling." As the show wrapped up, something rare happened. The tension didn't fade. It transformed. Cameras caught Joy pulling out her phone, opening her notes app, asking Reba to repeat names. Reba leaned closer, listing artists, songs, stories, her voice calmer now, but just as strong. There was no fake hug moment, no cheesy wrap-up. Just two women sitting across from each other, one rebuilding what she broke, the other refusing to let the lesson be wasted. And as the music played them out, Reba left one final truth hanging in the air. Not shouted, not dramatized, just solid and unmovable. "Respect isn't agreeing," she said. "Respect is refusing to reduce people you don't understand." If this moment shocked you, inspired you, or made you see this clash differently, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss the next real showdown, real conversation, and real moment of truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Whose side were you on, and what part of this clash hit you the hardest? Your voice matters here.